Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited. Before we begin today, I just want to take a couple of minutes to explain the last couple of weeks. I was unfortunately rushed to the hospital about 3 weeks ago with a very virulent virus that it took the doctor some time to figure out exactly what was involved. I was quite ill for some time. Today is really my first official day back, although I've done a little bit of work from time to time. I am back. I apologize for the time lost, but one other thing I'll mention, I have quite a number of calls to return over the last couple of weeks. Be advised that after this call, I will be on the phones, and if you have contacted us in the last couple of weeks, whether by email or phone, and have not heard back, you will hear back from me by the close of business on Friday. So I'd appreciate it if you could be just a little bit more patient. I'm getting better every day, and I should be able to contact each and every one of you and resolve whatever issues that you may have, whether it's a service issue with an existing trust or the desire to establish a trust or questions with regard to establishing a trust. I'd like to welcome those of you to the call for the first time. We have a standard format here. We like to move rather quickly. We spend a few minutes talking about the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies, a few minutes talking about the program that we've put in place for you in a general sense, and then we go to a Q&A. I'm going to move a little slowly today, but we'll get through it, and then I'll be on to contacting each and every one of you over the next couple of days. So let's go ahead and get started. Talk a little bit about the situation as it exists in Iraq. We believe the Iraqi dinar is the base currency for the reset of some of these other currencies, so that's where we like to concentrate our efforts. First, by way of a disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar or the other currencies. We are not advocating the purchase or sale of these currencies, but we're sharing with you, as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, the information that we feel is relevant. The first issue of concern would be a window for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. We were hopeful at the beginning of the year that the reinstitution of the dinar would occur in the first quarter. I guess that's still possible, but in our view, it's unlikely, and frankly, at this point in time, it's undesired. For reasons that I've stated on numerous occasions, we do not want to see a reinstitution or a revaluation of the dinar very late in any given quarter because it creates a time problem for us with regard to taxes that would be due at the beginning of the next quarter. So at this point, the second quarter makes much more sense from both an exchange, tax, and investment point of view. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Iraq. For the most part, the banking and currency reforms have been completed, but we have not seen the reinstitution of the currency because there still remain political obstacles in country, and there still remains undue Iranian influence in country. The parliament has still not confirmed several vacant ministerial seats in Mahdi's cabinet. Iranian militias still operate in Iraq, although U.S. troops have assisted with counterterrorism efforts to reduce and hopefully eradicate entirely undue and unwanted Iranian influence in country. In addition, the government of Iraq is currently tracking billions of dinar that have been smuggled out of the country by many of these corrupt officials, and hopefully they'll be able to move on from this period of government corruption that has existed all the way back going to 2003. Now, Prime Minister Mahdi is officially on notice that he must provide acceptable candidates for the ministerial seats and other government positions, or at least provide an acceptable part-time proxy by June, or he will face a no-confidence vote in the parliament. So they're basically giving Mahdi till June to resolve all of this. Of course, that puts us in the second quarter. So hopefully these issues will be resolved. The attempts to reinstitute the currency will be acceptable to the U.S. Treasury, to the IMF, and the other agencies. But again, the two sticking points seem to be confirmation of ministerial seats in a few other positions and eradication, finally, of undue Iranian influence in country. Now, having said that, that still does provide time for individuals to get their affairs in order prior to the revaluation, and rather the reinstitution and then the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Many people do not know what that would entail. To that end, Trusts Unlimited has put into place a turnkey program to assist you. It's a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV or Phase 1 involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Post-RV involves all the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. So let's start with Phase 1, which is the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. Very simply, a trust is a legal instrument one can establish to hold, to manage, and to protect assets. Trusts can fall into some basic categories. For example, a trust can be revocable or a trust can be irrevocable. In order to have the asset protection you are going to need and want, you're going to need to establish a package of irrevocable trusts for the following reasons. First, by establishing this pre-RV trust package and assigning your currencies on paper to that trust package, you will be able to successfully preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets held within an irrevocable trust are sealed, and the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you will be able to successfully avoid personal IRS scrutiny. By establishing this pre-RV trust package and assigning your currencies on paper to that package, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of the revaluation from yourself personally to the trust package. If you're holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will probably spit out an audit, and with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to prior year's earnings, you're probably going to be looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming, it would be extremely frustrating, and frankly, it would probably cost you more than an asset protection trust. On the other hand, if your trust package is in place and your currencies have been assigned to that trust package, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit. But even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currency to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to gift currencies prior to their revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the lump sum after you've done the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, then you can gift to them through the special gift subtrust that is part of our trust package. By gifting through this subtrust, you will avoid the 40% federal gift tax. The language of this trust will allow you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning that you can gift them the exact U.S. dollar that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. And because you're gifting through this special gift subtrust, not only will their U.S. dollars be protected along with yours, but you will then be able to manage, invest, and distribute those funds to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax, the tax that the federal government will assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Scenario number two, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that same estate of $25 million, but this time in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate, there will be no public disclosure of your estate, your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV asset protection trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer those currencies to our asset protection trust package. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have very deep packets and a very strong case, because this trust package has been structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. Second, and most importantly, pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, once this prospective plaintiff learns that the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be $5,000, the value of the property at the time you transferred it to the trust, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit because there will be no financial gain by filing a lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection has been accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets, and this is how it would work. Once again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust package. They subsequently revalue for 25 million. Now that you have 25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust, the initial trust which held your pre-RV currencies. Now, why is this important from an asset protection standpoint? Well, let's say you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts of which you're merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other assets are safely protected in other subtrusts. Now, why are those assets protected? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities, and the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue those separate legal entities. So this trust package works very much the way a barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your trust package prior to the reinstitution and revaluation of these currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, the holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in all the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you Phase 2 post-RV. I'll just make mention of one here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to help you with the funding and management of your post-RV trust package. Many of our clients have expressed desires to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is by transferring funds directly from your pre-RV asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. We'll also have our tax specialists available. Our offshore specialists will show you that by establishing offshore title of certain assets, you can substantially reduce and in some cases eliminate taxes on the reinvested proceeds, net proceeds from the revaluation itself. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. It's going to be critical for you to reposition assets after the revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at the accounts at those banks. So you're going to want to get money out of the banks and at work in other markets as quickly as possible. Lastly, the general shift from fiat-based to commodity-based currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial portion of your holdings to be invested in tangible rather than financial assets. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust, which will hold your pre-RV currencies, and then post-RV holds your financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts. One optional gift subtrust that will hold gifted currencies, which at any time can be converted to a standard subtrust, along with the 8 additional standard subtrusts to hold physical assets like cars, homes, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Denarians, we knew that price tag would be unaffordable for many. So by restructuring this package post-RV, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's simply not possible, we do have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket cost just to produce and deliver your trust package. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. With this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for establishing their pre-RV asset protection trust package prior to the revaluation should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your credit card would be less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Again, we're trying to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies for all of the reasons that we've stated here. Now, we will be going to the Q&A in a moment, but before we do, and again, for the benefit of our newer callers, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously consider allowing us to assist you. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in this area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning, and it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, it's just the reverse. It's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them. And invariably, it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number one loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can protect, manage, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances without the fear of financial loss is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. We're about to go to the Q&A, but I just want to state it one more time. For those of you that have attempted to contact us in the last couple of weeks, we have your information, whether you've contacted us by phone or email. And for the balance of today, all day Thursday and Friday, I will be on the phones and in emails contacting each and every one of you for whatever reason that you contacted us. So please just be a little bit patient, and by the close of business on Friday, we should have resolved whatever issues you may have. Now we're going to go to the Q&A. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We take no service calls on the Q&A. This is reserved for individuals that have questions about our turnkey program. And for obvious reasons, your name and number must be on the screen in order to participate in the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call this afternoon, with the exception of the last 2 digits. Rather than dialing 40, you'll dial 39 and then use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. This call should be available by 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out very periodically pre-RV, but emails could go out weekly and possibly even daily after the initial revaluation of these currencies. So let's go to the Q&A. Our first caller here is area code 405. That's 405. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. Thank you. Sorry about your demise over the last couple of weeks. Couple of questions.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, sir. The sanctions, Iranian sanctions, went into effect, I believe, on December the 1st, and Iraq was given a 90-day exemption from those, from following the provisions of the sanctions. That should have ended on the end of February. Has there been any indication about them getting into a point of compliance as far as lack of trade or something of that nature with Iran?
My understanding is that they are still dealing with Iran in areas. Now, of course, one of the issues is the natural gas that Iraq needs until they get their electric grid back up. I think the United States, on the one hand, is sort of looking the other way, but it also is affecting the reinstitution of their currency. The U.S. Treasury, the Trump administration, does not want to see a reinstitution until they feel that Iran has lost their influence. Iran influences in 3 ways. Number one, they've got these militias in country, and there are some officials in Iran that are Shia and are sympathetic to Iran. Number 2, by continuing to purchase the natural gas, that assists Iran, which the United States does not want. And number 3, the corrupt officials are still trying to smuggle currency out of Iraq, and Iran is one of the places where it's going, along with Dubai. So it's unfortunately a situation that is dragging on, and of course this is why one of the reasons we see the postponement of the reinstitution of their currency.
Okay, second question. I can understand the process for the reinstitution of the value of the dinar basically coming out of a programmed rate being implemented by the United Nations and the IMF. I can see that. As what happened in Kuwait when they came back out of their programmed rate. When you talk about the revaluation of other currencies, for example, the Vietnamese dong, my problem with trying to understand that is the fact that the Vietnamese dong is a legally traded currency that you can buy at any bank that has a currency department. And when you compare the economy, for example, of South Korea, where their currency is trading at about the same value as the dinar is, it's about 1,100 to 1,200 won to the dollar. When you think about the dynamic aspect of the Korean economy, what makes the potential for something like the Vietnamese dong to go up when it already has an established value? Or is this just some, flavoring, I guess, to sort of enhance the potential of revaluations of currencies around the world like the dong or the zim or something like that? I don't understand how that could be possible when they're already a publicly traded currency.
You know, I kind of share your view of that. The Vietnamese dong has not really revalued. It's been pretty much a low value for decades, yet the country is thriving. I guess it's because they have had decades to recover very slowly, whereas Iraq is still reeling from what's happened with the removal of Saddam and then the insurgency, and then of course they're crippled by the corruption that's involved there. Also, the situation with Iraq is current relative to what happened with the Vietnamese dong or Vietnam. We're looking at, as I said, a global shift from the fiat base to the Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies. So the situation as it exists today is different than it was for Vietnam in the late 70s. But I know it is kind of confusing. The only way I look at it is if you look at the value of all of the dinars in the neighboring countries that surround, with the exception of Iran, all the other countries that surround Iraq, they're worth $3 for each of their dinar, and those countries collectively do not have the natural resources of Iraq. So it does not make sense that Iraq could not reach an equilibrium price of at least $3 per dinar based on the underlying resources, based on Basel III compliance, which is a factor today, which was not a factor 30 years ago in Vietnam. I also say with regard to Vietnam recently found large oil reserves off the shore of North Vietnam, and there's an indigenous plant there that's being used for a sugar substitute that is, there's international interest in that, especially in the West. So it is rather a kind of a confusing situation, and that's all I can basically say about that. I wish I could give you a definitive answer for that. But it's just, unfortunately, the vicissitudes of international currency markets.
I understand, and I think it leads to some confusion about the certainty that others on the Internet basically are purveying that when the dinar goes, all these other currencies will go. And I think it's sort of putting out false hope. I just don't see how the Vietnamese dong can flip so quickly just because the dinar does. And I talked to people who own dong, and they're absolutely, adamant that this is going to be a currency worth 45 or 50 cents. And I just can't. I have to shake my head because I can't see it happening at that moment that the dinar revalues and that it basically springs open this wellspring of the value for all these other currencies around the world.
I understand. On the other hand, if these currencies all revalue at 10 cents, we should all do very well.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, that's something that's to be considered. Now this is just my personal opinion. I'm called constantly. People want to set up trusts and they say, I have this currency or I have that currency. What's your opinion? And I say, okay, this is my personal opinion. If I could only own one currency, it would be the dinar. If I could only hold two currencies, it would be the dinar and the dong. Even though I have a substantial amount of other currencies like the rupiah and the zim, if I had to dump two of them, it would be those two. I own no real. I do not anticipate a substantial increase in the real, and I personally do not hold any real for personal reasons. I just, you know, it's just the country's just run by a bunch of immoral thugs, so I'm not interested in profiting from anything that they're doing. So that's just the way I look at it. But again, if the dinar comes, I've already done the calculations. I had in my head a rock bottom minimum amount of money I wanted to walk away with after taxes on these exchanges. So the amount of dinar I own are based on two things: a 10-cent revaluation and a 50% tax. So if it comes back at $1, even with the 50% tax, I will end up with 10 times more than my rock bottom minimum. So I always say to people, if you're concerned about taxes or you're concerned about what the reval is going to be, then just work backwards. Try to figure out the rock bottom amount you want when it's all said and done, and that's how you determine how much currency to purchase.
I like that. That's sound. Yes. Yes, that's good. Well, I have a bunch of more questions, but I could monopolize the thing. And
Well, what is your first name? I'm sorry, I didn't get your first name.
My name is Doug, and I'm in Oklahoma.
Doug. Okay, Doug. Well, listen, I've written down your phone number, and if you don't mind, I'll give you a call later this afternoon. You can ask whatever questions you want. Yes, sir. Well, I will give you a call.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, Doug. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, our next caller is area code 931. That's 931.
Hello, Jim. Glad to hear your voice again. Glad everything's up and up, and I'm looking forward to many more calls from you. Hopefully, not too many more for the.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. I hope they're post RV calls.
Anyway, Jim. Yeah, this is Manny from Tennessee, Jim.
There you go. See, I'm getting it together. I recognize your voice.
Oh, great. Jim, I had a couple, more of a statement, and you can correct me. I got in on the call a little late, but it's a two-part question. One is, what is the significance of here lately that Iran, according to the articles, has and Iraq have signed many agreements, including some of the bank agreements, so that they can kind of work together, if you will, because Iran, as you know, needs the dollars, and Iraq's able to facilitate the dollars. What's your opinion on that?
That's part of the problem. That's one of the reasons why we haven't seen a reinstitution. Now, what happens if you go back to, say, the IMF and the UN, and a lot of times they will make statements. I'll give you the best example is, for example, Greece was not making payments to the austerity program that was funded by Germany, and they kept giving them a deadline, and the Greeks kept going beyond the deadline, and they kept extending the deadline. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to keep extending the deadline for Iraq to divest itself of involvement with Iran, and they'll be making compromise after compromise. The reason I have a problem with it is because it's postponing the revaluation. I'm hopeful that they come to terms as quickly as possible so that we can see this reval second quarter. The other issue is that the political instability still exists with regard to the confirmation of ministerial positions for Mahdi's cabinet and some of the other officials, and it looks as though the parliament is giving Mahdi a drop-dead date in June to get these acceptable individuals, at least proxy, temporary people in these slots, or they're looking at a no-confidence vote. So once they get past that hurdle, and also the United States and Iraq have come to an agreement on the number of forces U.S. forces that will remain in Iraq and will be presiding over the counterterrorism to kind of like thwart what Iran's trying to do. So hopefully they'll never get it to where I think the United States and the international community is going to be 100% satisfied, but hopefully they'll massage the situation to the point where the United States is going to go ahead and say, okay, let's go ahead and let them reinstitute.
I see. So you feel like the United States and possibly Trump, in your opinion, has a big say-so in the whole reinstitution?
Yes, and okay. I think they want to see it done. And,
okay.
There's also internal politics here as well. Trump would want to get this done for the same reason that Obama didn't want to get it done. The revaluation of the Iraqi dinar would result in conservatively 5 to 6 million Americans becoming millionaires. Now, these are individuals that are not going to be voting for larger government and higher taxes in 2020. So just as the Obama administration kind of would prefer dependency, the Trump administration would prefer a lack of dependency because these individuals will not be voting for bigger government. So, that's got to be part of their calculus. I know it seems kind of self-centered, but politics is politics.
Yeah, and the other question I had, I've been hearing from some credible sources, I won't mention, that probably, and it could be likely, but again, this is all conversations, if you will. No one knows anything as far as when and where and what time the date is. But what's your opinion, or what is your, what can you help us with because you've been through this, can you walk us through with a hand in it to say, these are the steps in case we have to take your money, which would be our money, the people that bought the trust and that have confidence in the attorney and yourself, what are the steps that are going to be taken if we do have to allow us to have to go to Iraq if it's an in-country deal and we have to travel to Iraq?
It won't be an in-country deal. It won't be. Okay, so don't worry about that. That's not going to be an in-country deal, and one of the reasons it won't be an in-country deal is because the United States banks want to be the middleman for this exchange. Basically, what's going to happen is you're going to go to the bank. The United States government is basically purchasing the currency for whatever the rate's going to be. They will destroy that currency, and they will record but destroy the hard currency, and they will use that to then go to Iraq and purchase oil and do a variety of other things. So the banks want to be involved for a lot of reasons, because they're going to get the fee for doing the exchange, because they're going to have a lot of that USD remain in their banks under management. So that this is the payback, and this is why it's being done the way it's being done. Remember, the Kuwaiti dinar was virtually nothing compared to this situation. In Kuwait, the best deal you probably got in the Kuwait deal, the best possible deal you could have gotten is you purchased the currency, the Kuwaiti dinar for maybe 15 cents and got $3.50 back. Now, that's a great day at the office, but that's nothing like a dinar that's worth 1/1200th of a penny, and then all of a sudden it's worth $3. That's just huge. So the two situations are not comparable in terms of volume, and that's probably the difference. But you did have to go to Kuwait to do the exchange.
And that's what I'm thinking, and what you just got through saying makes a lot of sense about the banks wanting to be in the middle of it because, I call them the gangsters. They're banksters, if you will.
Well,
they always want to have their.
I'll tell you something else. When the Kuwaiti deal happened, of course, this was pre-9/11. We didn't have the TSA involved. We did have the FinCEN report. In other words, if you leave the country with more than $10,000 in currency, and of course, if the dinar revalues and you try to leave the country and go through an international airport, I just don't want to do that, and I don't think they would require us to do that. As a matter of fact,
I don't want to do that either.
If that were necessary, I would do something like just get in a car and drive to Canada, because I don't want to go through an airport. I just don't want to do it.
I don't either. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. And
yes, sir.
Everything you said makes a lot of sense, and we'll keep moving forward.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Okay, our next caller is area code 347. Yes. That's 347. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Praveen from New York. Okay, first of all, congratulations on feeling better.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, and also now, I was hearing in the news that ISIS is on its last legs in Syria, so could that also be holding up the RV once ISIS is completely defeated?
Of course, that's got to be part of it because, Syria is on the border, and, of course, ISIS had spilled over into the Anbar province. The other concern, however, is that if the United States takes too many troops out of Syria, that would open the door for Turkey to come into Syria. And Turkey, of course, is after the Kurds, and it also would give the Iranians an opportunity to put more of their missile installations in Syria, so it's an indirect effect on what's going on. They want to see stability with the neighbors. I think too much. Unfortunately, Donald Trump sometimes speaks in such generalities, he creates problems. He trotted out there one day because he loves to talk to the media and said, I'm pulling troops out of the Middle East. And, of course, he didn't mean he was going to pick up the phone and say, okay, everyone come home tomorrow. It turned out that he planned over a long extended period of time to pull out approximately half the troops as the generals on the ground say it's feasible. But, of course, he didn't say that. As usual, he went out there, God bless him, in his clumsy way, and just bottom lines everything. You never see his long division. You only see the answer. And so that created a problem, which had to be clarified. But as a general rule, the stability needs to occur. And the problem is Iran, which has been the problem since the late 70s.
Okay, now the thing is with Iran is always going to have some type of influence in Iraq since it's its neighbor and right. The Shia population and all that, is also the Shia population has ties. Well, I mean, how much? I don't think the U.S. can ever completely eliminate Iranian influence. So are they going to reach? Will the NSA or whatever reach some kind of a compromise?
That's why I said to the previous caller, there's not going to be an absolute eradication of Iranian influence. They're just going to have to massage the situation and get to a point where they feel that they've done the best they can to minimize Iran. Now, one of the ways to minimize Iran is by allowing the Iraqi economy to thrive, in which case they will not need Iran because they will have international contracts with other countries to assist them with rebuilding their infrastructure, their electrical grid, plumbing, and all the water and all of those issues. So it's a situation that's just postponing the inevitable.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. That's got to be Les.
Yes, indeed. Good afternoon, Jim. How are you? Well, you sound 100%. I want to ask, how are you?
Well, I'm not 100%, but I'm walking around. I'm somewhere, so I'm happy.
Good. Well, good to hear you back.
Thank you.
And thank the professor for standing in.
Okay.
I'm sure he had more information to give us than he gave us, but I wanted to ask questions, but he never took any, so have to catch him next time.
He leaves that up to me. He's he's the clinician. I'm the bedside manner guy, so he lets me handle that.
So my comment, Iran met with Iraq. Rouhani of Iran met with the head of Iraq Monday and Tuesday, taking pictures and everything. He flew over and they had some memorandums of understanding regarding how they were going to function with this sanction. So if Trump reinstated the sanctions, and then there was another article today that comes out saying the sanctions stem back as far as 1995 when Clinton did whatever he did, it seems like the sanctions that everyone's speaking of, even President Trump, is a bunch of crap. Because if these two countries are still signing MOIs or MUIs, or I'll just say memorandums of understanding, they seems to be working around whatever is open in the sanctions in order to function together. Because Iraq has already stated they're not going to leave them. They're not going to leave them high and dry. They're going to help them.
Like I said, they're never going to be able to completely and totally sever Iraq and Iran. The objective is to minimize, to the extent possible, Iranian influence in country. Now, they're working on two fronts. Number one, there are still international sanctions, so they can do all the business they want with Iraq, but the European nations and other nations are on notice. You deal with Iran, then you can't deal with us. So Iran is still not having the international business contracts that it wants. The other issue is by getting Iraq up and on its feet and able to, in other words, they won't be as dependent on Iran because they will have the wherewithal to deal with other countries and they will want to deal with other countries. There, unfortunately, is still a day of reckoning with Iran that's going to have to happen, and it's probably going to involve military. I mean, I don't see any other way around it. So until then, the only thing that we can do is, to the best of our ability, try to sever relations between Iraq and Iran, and make Iraq understand that their interests lie with dealing with the United States, not Iran, just as the United States is trying to make the EU understand you can deal with Iran with a $400 billion economy, or you can deal with the United States with a $20 trillion economy. So, you got to pick your poison.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to stop. I mean, if your neighbor was in need and they were helping you when you were down, would you cut your neighbor off just because someone says, hey, you got to cut them off and not do anything with them? No, you wouldn't.
The hope is that Iran continues to die a death by 1,000 cuts. Their economy is in the crapper. Their real is not going to revalue. They're not Article 8 compliant with the UN. They're not going to see a substantial increase in the real. So Iran needs Iraq as well. It's a symbiotic relationship because, yes, it's true that Iraq needs the natural gas, but it's also true that Iran desperately needs a customer. So once again, the only thing the United States can do to the best of their ability is try to isolate Iran, try to take away its customers, try to minimize to the extent possible Iraq's dealings with Iran, and at the same time make it understandable to Iraq that their future lies with the international community, not Iran. And that
the international community. That international community last year stated that they were not going to bail out on the arms talk or whatever that thing was that they agreed with before Trump came on board. Obama and all those other countries had an agreement.
Yeah,
and now when Trump comes on board,
the
nuke thing, Right. So these other countries says just because the U.S. bailed out, they're not bailing out because they have already money invested, and people in the country of their country.
Right, and by bleeding Iran, it's going to bleed their ability to make profitable agreements with these. It's a time thing. It's just going to take time. At some point, they're going to realize if we have to choose between Iran or the United States, we're going to have to choose the United States. As a matter of fact, the fact that these countries are still dealing with Iran means that there's no moral compass involved in their decision. It's purely about money. What Trump is saying, it's only a matter of time that if they're operating on the basis of profit, they're going to end up having to deal with the United States and rejecting Iran.
Well, I'm already reading that they're going to use a different currency, and I heard last night, what's the guy's name? I can't remember the guy's name. He had a call. Say again?
You're talking about Iran using another reserve currency.
Another currency like the euro.
Right.
Yeah, using the euro for the purchase.
But
this other
point. My point is, by the EU allowing that to occur, they're, like I said, okay, they can do 10 cents worth of business with Iran and lose $1 worth of business with the United States. They cannot continue that. The other reason they're doing this, frankly, is just to thwart the United States.
Yeah. All right.
The EU was established to begin with to compete with the United States. It was supposed to be the counterbalance to the United States, to what was established at the Bretton Woods Conference after World War II. That was the whole point, and the EU is falling apart.
All righty. Yeah, that is for sure, but they will
Greece
be back
is on
together.
The way out the door. Spain wants out. Portugal wants out. Ireland wants out. We still have the situation with Brexit. They tried to. Germany is now trying to do oil deals with Russia. So what's the United States do? Produces substantially more oil. Now we're the number one producer of petroleum. What does that do? It reduces the global price of a barrel of oil. Who does that hurt? Russia. 90% of their revenues come from oil. So it's all very, very complicated scenario, and it's going to take time to work itself out. But basically, the Trump administration is we're going to bleed them, and it's just going to take a while.
Yeah. Well, the Brexit deal might work. They may leave, but all the other ones, they're not leaving. They're not going anywhere. They may say they want to leave, but
if the Brexit deal works out and the United Kingdom is able to trade with the United States and other non-EU nations, then the other countries are going to leave, because remember, a lot of those countries owe money to the EU. So they want out. If they get out, theoretically, they don't have to pay that debt back. So
right.
We'll just see what happens. All
right.
And my point is
Thanks.
that it's going to take time to resolve all this, which is unfortunate for us, because we just want the damn thing to revalue. We want to go to the bank. We want to do our exchange. We want to move on down the road.
Say it again. Thanks, Jim, for taking my call. Glad you're feeling better.
Here. Thanks a lot, Les.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
Well, that was our last call for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to the call. If the things we've discussed are of interest, please contact us. We'll be happy to send you our initial package. You are under absolutely no obligation whatsoever by receiving the package, even though it does contain everything that you need in order to proceed with establishing the trust package. Review the information. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to answer your questions. There will be no consultation fee. So, again, thanks for listening to the call. We'll be back again next week. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then we will get an emergency email out and try to schedule an emergency call. But failing that, we will be back next week, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Bye-bye, everyone.